Everybody in Lithuania definitely knows Danske Bank. So Jan was a part of the leadership team behind Danske Bank's huge transformation that we've all been following. And during that time, he said that he was visiting Lithuania, the country of rain, quite often. So another thing that he said about Lithuania, that he cannot validate this rainy country name for Lithuania because of the nice and smiling people. So now Jan is gonna give you a really cool introduction about Scrum Masters. So please be active, ask questions, and I'm still leaving you a chance to unmute yourselves and just be proactive, okay? So Jan, stage is yours.
Just wanted to unmute. Can you, Inga, confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Super. So I put a question on the screen already, and I would really like you to, let's spend a minute here and let you have you share. And as Inga is saying, this is going to be as good as your participation. I can only deliver a message and share my experience. Oh, there we go. So somebody's definitely typing something, and it should go through. It normally does, but either not typing anything or not clicking send. But let's go back to this then at the end and see if we have some results here. So professionalizing the Scrum Master role is what I'm going to talk about. And Inga already presented me, so I don't want to use too much time on that. But as being said, I was part of the leadership team in Danske Bank for the last transformation of the organization. In there, I worked a lot together with, we choose to have agile coaches for different reasons in Danske Bank. And we had a fairly big amount of new agile coaches. So how did we work structured with that competency development? I also use this as a company named Grundfos to do water pumps. They're the leading manufacturer of water pumps in the world. They had some kind of similar story. They wanted some change. They have done some change maybe too quickly, and now they needed something to grow their Scrum Masters, which was the terminology they'd used, in a focused way. So how did we get the best benefit out of the Scrum Masters in the organization? So that's why I'm here. So it's not just a concept I thought up, made some playing cards or anything like that. This is actually something that are living out there today. People that are here from Danske Bank maybe have seen it, maybe not. Your tribe coaches know about it, so you can ask them if they're not using it. Then I blame them. Of course, I don't blame myself. For my part, I am a certified coach, or certified real coach also, but also an agile one. I am part of Better Change, the fellowship Better Change. Some of you participated in Bent Müllerup's training yesterday about coaching. So I'm part of that collective, that fellowship. Enough about me and kind of the background for this. Why do we then want to do this? Why is this even important? First of all, what we do in most organizations is that we want to change something. That's why we're being agile or having agility, adaptability. It's a constant kind of change. So first of all, we want the Scrum Masters to support that change, of course. We also want them to challenge that. This is all about being there where the organization are. And we're coming back to that, focusing on the organization. Change is hard. You can take Daniel's word for it here. We can also ask Deming. A lot of these things are systemic. So changing something in people's minds or in the system is definitely hard. And when we're pressured on something, we have a default of searching back where we were before. To be honest, the Scrum Master role is also an unknown role. I do understand that companies are hiring for Scrum Masters, etc., etc. But the teams we know, right? They're the one doing the stuff we want them to do. The product owner, and this is an anti-pattern in itself, they are often seen as project managers, program managers, or something. So we have an understanding of what their role actually do. But what does the Scrum Master do? What does it focus on? Is it a facilitator? Is it a HR person? What is it? So having that understanding of enabling and understanding in the organization what the role is actually doing and what is helping the organization with is storytelling that we need to do. Then we have the role definition. The Scrum Guide, if you read it or not, or believe it or not, but if you look at it, it says that the Scrum Masters have 3 kind of focus dimensions. They focus on the team and the PO. And when we ask Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, what they do, they say, yeah, teams and product owners check on that. There's some that are not as good at the product owner part, but normally that is what we see happening. But there's only 50% that is working on the organizational part. The problem with that is, if you go back to Deming, he says that you can affect 5% yourself, the rest of the system surrounding you. So if you're not focusing on the organization, we can have very little impact. So how do we make sure that we have that organizational focus? What it basically says is that if you have the organization maturity-wise here, and you're out here on top of the mountain, wanting the agile thing, screaming for the organization to move with you, it's too far a distance. So how do we help? You need to go down the hill and fetch the organization and help them up. And that's back to the supporting part. You also need to challenge them. So there's, okay, if there's a gap there. So you kind of want them to move also. It's like having kids, right? You want to help your kids, but you also need to challenge them to grow. Or else you're going to do their lunches until they move away from home when they're 30, because they not want to move away from home before, because it's nice to have daddy or mommy. So we need to help the organization also understand this. The last dimension here is trust the Scrum Masters. We need to create some kind of trust and trustworthiness around this. This is actually taken from Trusted Advisor. It talks about that we have to have credibility. That's our competencies which we're coming back to. We have to develop and make sure we have the right competencies. We want to be reliable. When we do something, say something, show up, we actually do it. People believe in us. Intimacy is not cuddling our people. Don't do that, not even, at least not today, not before either. But it's not about that. It's about people being safe in your space. That's the main thing here. What all of this upsets of is self-orientation. So are you focusing on helping the organization on that journey, or just focusing on yourself? And I want to develop this, and that competency. Or are you focusing on the organization? Your focus should, of course, be the organization, and again, help support and challenge that organization as needed. Another way of saying all of this, or some of this, is what Søren Kiekerbye, which is a Danish dude, said. He's not alive today. He was a philosopher, and as he says, if one is truly succeeding in leading a person to a specific place, up the hill, one must first and foremost take care to find him where he is and being there. So again, down and fetching the organization and helping them. Søren is long past dead today. There's a lot of healing in here, but don't blame him for that. It fits the time. I don't want to translate people's quotes because it's still his writing. But this is what we're looking for. It's the same with your coaching. You want to meet people eye to eye. If you're up here and the person you're coaching is down here, you're not getting in wavelength. It's not going to work. We need to trust each other. So let's translate this to Scrum Masters. So first of all, again, we need to support, but we also need to challenge. We also need to push. If you're just supporting, we're just staying the place we're at. So we need to push, of course, to get to a better place and help people realizing that. But don't be screaming and yelling uphill. But we want to do it based on the current organizational needs, which is based on the maturity of the organization. So if you're screaming up from here, teal or whatever buzzword, it's not a buzzword, but if you're screaming something up here and the organization not even are able to deliver something once a month, close to being able to release something, you probably have some other things you need to focus on first. And then again, the self-orientation is not about you or the team or whatever. It's what the organization wants to improve. What is the organizational goal? It's what we keep saying it, right? Agile is a vehicle, it's not the mean in itself. It helps us move something to something other, to something different. And that is what we want to do. We do not want to just do Agile for Agile's sake. We're doing Agile to reach an organizational goal. It could be more reliability, it could be faster to market, less bureaucracy, happier customers, happier employees, attracting more employees, whatever it is. That is the main goal of why we're doing this, not for doing Agile. So that is my take on what a Scrum Master does. Good. So how does this then relate? What we normally see a lot of time is competencies, and more competencies. So people have a tendency to say, I want this training, this and this and that, and I want to be good at all of this. I want to do everything. And the only thing people are not doing is focusing on what they actually want to develop. It doesn't help you, and it definitely doesn't help the organization most of the time. I have also been in this place. I done all of it. I liked it, and I have a tendency to say yes to too many things. It's not because I'm perfect, but it's not helpful, and it takes too long. It's like being a team and trying to develop something in a Scrum setup. If we actually can't carve down those pieces of cake and actually deliver something, we're never getting there. It's the same thing here. So what should we do instead then? What we should do instead, and I'm coming back to some more details on all of this modeling, is understanding where is the organization maturity-wise? What does the organization need? If you were an external, you would ask, what do the customer need? This is inspired by Agile Fluency Model. For those of you that are nerding the Agile Fluency Model, this is a maturity model, so it's only inspired by it. The fluency model has zones, have another dimension to it. This is not the same thing. It's just inspired from this. What it basically says is that we want to achieve something. We have a desired situation we want to end up into, up that hill, right? This can be ambition. This can be bold. Let's scream it from the top of the building. The C-level should be ecstatic about it, telling their colleagues on the golf course about this. It should still be achievable, but it should be bold, right? But we need to take that and say, okay, we're not, because now we're up the hill, right? Screaming and saying we should do this. We need to go down the hill and find where are we today and meet people where they are. When we understand that, we can chunk down, and I know this sounds like waterfall, sorry for that. We can chunk down our way towards where we want to end up. Our North Star, the top of the hill, whatever we want to call it. When we're doing this, we are now able to communicate the change. And just as a backlog, the first things we do are more detailed. So the first step we're doing is more detailed. We can now communicate this to our organization and say, this is why we're focusing on A, B, and C when we are approaching you in the teams, or we're changing something. This is the reasoning for it. This is not the end state. We want to go up there, but we're focusing on this first now. This is something the organization also understands. And do you know what? The next couple of steps, those are just loosely defined. When you're taking the first step, you're going to learn a bunch of things. And hey, yes, you are going to change some of those definitions of the next steps. You are going to get more sharp when you get closer to it, more details, but you will also change it. Does that mean anything? No. The organization is not going to even discover it. You can even communicate to them that we'll learn these things. Now we're changing the focus a little here. We still want to go to that North Star, but we're changing something to get to there because we have some learnings. And now again, we can put in concrete targets and concrete actions that we want to take that next step. So, because what we now can do is say that, okay, so now we know what the organization is. We know what the organization needs. So what we have on the right side here is what you normally would see. We would not talk about the left side. We just do the right side. That's what we see most of the times people do. By the way, this is inspired on the Y-axis from Lisa Atkins and Michael Spade's work on Agile Coaching Competency Framework. And then somebody says, but this is Scrum Masters, not Agile Coaches. Remember, it's called Agile Coaching Competency Framework. You can give a ring to Lisa afterwards, or Spade or Michael if you want, but it says coaching. On the other dimension, it talks about what Dreyfus, the Dreyfus model of skill acquisition. What that talks about is how you learn stuff and what you need to focus on learning to kind of have the next dimension of your insight, the next stage of your skill. So what we're able to do here is say about, hey, if the organization need to focus on customer value, understand pivoting towards customers, getting real customer feedback in shorter feedback loops, and the team actually working as a team and actually being able to deliver stuff, not in half a year, but frequently. We need to focus on some specific corners here. So when we look at this and say, hey, first of all, Agile and Lean, those are the knowledge, those are the bread and butter of your trade, right? That's why you're hired. You're expected to have some knowledge here. Maybe it's not perfect, but that is what we're looking at. The vehicles to kind of deliver that can be multiple, but we're saying here about facilitation is very important because people are still fairly new to this. We need to help them along, also challenge them, but help them along. And we need to teach them because they don't have the existing knowledge today, maybe. And when you can teach something, you also understand it better yourself. So now these two are in alignment. So we have the organization knowing why and what we're doing. Even management knows it, they support it. We also now know where to focus our effort as an organization. Maybe you're there already or not. Maybe you have some other interest, but the organization needs to have a specific focus, like it or not. So my question now to you is, because I'm going to go through how this looks in real life, is that I would like to ask you, and let's see if there's something pops up here, again, which competencies are you focusing on developing right now? And I have no clue where you're at in your life, so this could definitely be different from person to person. There's no right or wrong answers here. Now Alicia proves that it's working. Let's just stay there for a couple of minutes. So thank you for sharing that. We are somewhat going to come back to this. But great thing. One of the things why I'm asking this question is when we did these assessment or talk with people, we actually discovered that there's a lot of people out there that haven't put that much thought into where they need to focus their competency development. They want certification A, B, or C or something like that, and that's also fair enough. But what is the gap of the current knowledge, and where should they focus? And we also had examples of people in groups, department, not even talking together on these things, which is a shame. So most of you here, or some of you at least, know what to focus on in where you're at the current time. So that's great. So how does this look in real life then? How is this being executed? With the time frame, I could use 2 days on this, but that's not what I'm having. So I'm doing this instead. First of all, number 1 and 3 here, the ones that are not in bold, are parts that have something to do with the organization. First of all, we can do the competency part without involving anybody else. But if we want this to stick and we want to focus on the right things, and we have the organization understanding why we're doing what we're doing, we need to plant this first. We need management support on this. We need management to understand why we're focusing on moving the organization from here to here first, and then here and here, and what is entitled. They have to understand that. And they have to support that. Because if they're not, you're just running around and saying, hey, that thing there is not what I'm focusing on right now. I'm not doing that. So we need that support. Then we have the baseline. I introduced this entire concept and got a baseline in 45 minutes inside an organization of 70 Scrum Masters. Not the best baseline in the world, but it's not that hard actually. Then, of course, when we have the Scrum Masters on board also, if they weren't already, we need to communicate this to the rest of the organization with the help of management. So the organization now understands why the Scrum Masters are focusing doing what they're doing, because there's a reason for it. And they understand their storytelling. Those 1s and 3s are the hardest ones. The last one is growing. So now we have a baseline. We also then understand what the gap is. How do we close that gap together? We're going to focus on 2 and 4 because 1 and 3 is an entire implementation plan. First of all, to get at the baseline. This is actually done fairly simple by asking people where they feel they are today. We did this in Miro. As you see on the second column of the competencies, there's a description of the competencies. Then you have the scale, the stages from Dreyfus on top here, also description what those different stages entitle. And now some of these boxes are empty, but then in general, and each where these X and Y cross each other, there's a kind of description, definition of what it then means. So we had this in all the boxes describing how this looks and what is expected of people being here in that specific competency. So now you just give people a time box of 7 minutes to, they're reading it for the first time, 10 minutes, putting in a sticker where they think they are. Then you're giving them a time box of 5 minutes of looking what their colleagues did and adjust their score if they see that maybe they put it too high or too low compared to their colleagues. This takes some safety to do. So the team people around this need to trust each other. There's also difference from country to country how we see some of these things. So you should, of course, be aware of that. We did it in smaller business units, so people know each other fairly well. It wasn't perfect, but you have a baseline, you start the conversation. So now we know where we're at. What we then want to do is understand where's the organization. And the coloring thing here, I just turn it around. So now it says that we want, in the 3 top competencies, we want the dots to be inside those gray areas. Because those gray areas, it's not gray areas, but grayly colored areas, is where we want people to be. So as you can see here, we have a gap in Agile Lean practitioner, we have a gap in teaching. So now we know that. Now we can take actions based on that. We can either take individual actions. Here we have Green, team member Green, which are an advanced beginner and Agile Lean practitioner. There's a gap to being competent here. What you're now doing is that you're saying, okay, so we're having Green figuring out, okay, I should probably focus on this. And what kind of methods do I then use to grow that competency? Workshop-wise, having people to do this themselves, again, it just takes 10 minutes. And then you ask the rest of the group kind of looking at their colleagues and saying, hey, here is a tip for what I think you could do. Maybe you should read this book, or person F in that part of the company knows something about this. Maybe you should go visit that person. So we help each other, kind of a catalog of ideas how to close this gap. We can now, in our weekly Scrum Master sessions or whatever we have where we meet, we can also use this to talk with each other and say, hey, how are things going, this and that. So help each other, holding each other, not being an a-hole, but helping each other to get working on some of this stuff. Then we can also see this as an organizational level. This could either be, this is not real data, by the way, but this could either be from what we did before with the 4 people, or this could be organization-wide of 100 persons. Based on where we want this to be, we also can mark and say, here we have a gap. And now we know as an entire organization where to put the focus on closing that gap. So again, we can have trustworthy Scrum Masters that have the right competencies. The way you could also look about this is that you have some self-development, you're responsible for that. You can buddy up with, let's see, what do we have here? The orange person on the teaching could buddy up with some of the others. The 3 ones that are advanced beginner and Agile and Lean, maybe not buddy up with pink, all of them, but they could actually help each other maybe. So we have an understanding of that. We can also build a local community of these 4 people. Again, they meet once a week, talk about these things. So that is kind of the near environment. We can also build a global environment where we have, again, these 100 Scrum Masters meeting up. We can have focus on specific topics. We can create master classes as kind of centralized training to close that gap in a larger organization. So we know now who to invite to help us instead of just doing all funny random stuff. And then there's some stuff that we can't have, we don't have the competencies inside. Those are the things that you have to go out in the market. Meetups, it's training, it's community of practice, whatever you have, I would, just like this conference, right? So we find inspiration somewhere else. So this is actually, it's what the main focus here is again, back to this. How do we make sure to focus our development so it's based on what the organization needs? And that's actually it for me. I have no clue how the timing is, but that was the presentation. And as being said before, the questions you put in is the answers that you get.
You have still a lot of time left. So, okay. Any questions? Like we have 15 minutes almost. I still encourage everybody to ask because of the presence. Yeah, and maybe you could share the experience with the Danske Bank as well. Like we know it's a huge bank here. It's very popular among especially IT people. So how it was there?
So as people are gathering questions, I can go into a little depth on that. The situation is Danske Bank was that Danske Bank, I should say it in Danish because that's the name of the thing, we have worked with Scrum and Agile in many years. A funny story for those of you that don't know it, the reason why Danske Bank actually started with Agile was because we bought a program from IBM and we wanted a more discount, but we couldn't get it. But instead we got consultancy hours. And then they said, we can do some of this agile stuff. And then somebody said, yes, let's try that. So that's actually how Danske Bank started officially their agile journey. It's not very sexy, I know, but that's the reality. What we wanted to make sure is that we ended up having 100 plus Scrum Masters. There's not as many today, I understand. And we had 26 tribe coaches. So we were more than 100 people all of a sudden. And a lot of these people were still fairly new to this role. So what we wanted to make sure is understand, okay, where's the organization currently? We kind of knew that. But where's the competency level and how do we work actively with that? So making sure that when we create masterclasses or content, because we're bringing in all of a sudden 100 people plus in a session of a masterclass, we wanted to make sure we didn't waste their time. And we wanted to make sure that the impact they had in the organization was the best possible whatsoever. Because what we've seen in the past is that with the first thing you save on, to be honest, if I should be brutally honest, is the Scrum Master Agile Coach. We want the developers because they're doing the stuff. So we don't want to get rid of those. So the first people we get rid of are the Scrum Masters. I also, as being said before, I have been a lot in Lithuania. You have to make these salary ranges. So I had, what is the name, Corn Ferry or somebody talking about salary ranges. And I was asked, okay, you have a team member, you have a product owner, a Scrum Master in a boat. Which is the first person you push out of the boat if the boat is going under? So what they were looking for, or actually asking for, they weren't looking for it, but it's ending up being the Scrum Masters because, again, they are not as known in that role or by the organization. So the thing here is that what I don't know, to be honest, because we started with some masterclasses and we had actually a lot of focus about the narrative. What is the Scrum Master doing? Why is it necessary? Why is it there? Oh, sorry, Agile Coach. Why is it there? Why is it necessary? To kind of have that storytelling when they went out into the teams. Because again, a lot of these people are new to the role. So we had to have that talk because we also saw a lot of companies hiring people in, and there's kind of a pre-understanding what a Scrum Master is, but it's not very well-founded, actually. Either end up being a Scrum secretary or a facilitator, and it is also a facilitator. So that's sitting down and actually agreeing on what the heck is my responsibility and communicating that to the organization. There was a definite need of doing that. And I see that again and again, to be honest. It's kind of taken for given that people know, and then we do a role description in the HR system. And then people still have an understanding that, hey, then we agree what it is. No, you don't. It's just one page of some text. It doesn't define your role. You need to talk about that and you need to communicate those expectations. And it comes down to a simple thing, actually. If there's no cure, there's no pay. So if you're not curing anything, if it's not visible to the system, the organization, what you're curing, why should I pay for having you going around? I should end on a high, I know that, but why would I pay for that as an organization? So if I can't see, and I've seen extremely good Agile coaches that is today VPs and stuff like that, and super well liked by their employees, come from Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. But the imposter syndrome, which is the new black in these years, was definitely in play. Understanding, because you've done a little here and there, and you do a lot actually. And there's a lot of these mechanisms, the oil in the machinery is all of a sudden there. The machine is more smooth, but it's kind of hard to see. So having that focus and saying, okay, we want to optimize this part of the machine right now with this focus. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. So that was kind of Danske Bank. I can talk forever, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, so a few sentences back when you've been talking, I remembered like one definition of who is a Scrum Master. So one of the populars was that it's a Jira monkey in the company. So yeah, one of the concepts, like, or like very expensive secretary.
Exactly. Yeah, but you're right. You also see a lot of these role descriptions where there's something that, again, you need to put things into Jira for people, blah, blah, blah. I agree that when you have remote teams, you need some tools, but I hope that people themselves can do a lot of stuff. And if somebody should be a Jira expert, it's the goddamn product owner that is taking down the needs from the customers or requirement or whatever you call it out there. They should be well defined. They should have small wire sketches of stuff and whatever they talk with the customers about that can be shown to the team. So somebody should be a Jira master is definitely the product owner, to be honest. So there's that misconception and misunderstanding what the role is, but also why it's focusing as it's focusing on. I've seen companies, and I love tech also, right? All kind of dashboards all over these workrooms. We had a really cool one. We could have 12 people in the same room, really cool room, a lot of monitors. We had a meeting desk. We could see people in other parts of the world. Super fun. We created a bunch of dashboards that told us the quality of our code and stuff like that. But the thing was, we didn't have our basic practices in order. So we focus more on creating the boards, showing stuff, than actually understanding how we should work together and how we make sure that things doesn't become just red. Because I don't care how pretty your dashboard is, because when it's been lighting red for a month, nobody cares anymore. So we need some basic practices in place. And we need, again, the organization to understand what the heck we're doing and why we're focusing as we are.
So true. So do we have any other questions from the audience? Anybody? Come on. So far, I don't see. So I think that, Jan, you did a great job and everything was like crystal clear. Like not even a question left from your topic. So one way or another. Oh, there are questions. Okay, 1 second. Somehow don't.
And as you're finding the questions, you're always welcome to reach out afterwards here or via the tool, I can't remember what it's called, or via LinkedIn or whatever.
Okay, I don't see any. Maybe the whole is stuck for me. Can somebody just paste to this Zoom chat? If there's anything. Sabina, could you maybe? Okay, she will paste in a second.
Yeah.
Okay, competence matrix. Where did you get it? Created at some point or grabbed from somewhere? I guess it changes per company or maybe not.
Yeah. So the competency matrix, there we go. So if then I'm thinking that that's being asked about the right side. Again, this is taking from Lisa Atkins and Michael Space's work, Agile Coaching Competency Framework. There are some description of what is expected of the different competencies in general. It doesn't break it down into stages like the Rayfus does. So it's just a generic description of what these different areas are. One thing I should say about the model, if you don't know it, is that the mastery level is actually talked about something that you need to do 5 years before you're actually mastering something at all. So it would normally be like if you're taking from the university, you're starting with some generical couple of years, and then you're taking a master in something. So you're kind of spanning out in different routes what you want to focus on. So that's that model. And yes, you have, I think what we ended up with is kind of a generical description that can be used across companies, but you definitely need to look in from company to company what these things are. I also have something similar, which is not complete yet, for project owners. And here the competencies is not totally different, but somewhat different. Then the different levels here is described by Dreyfus. What is expected of you in the different stages. And what we did a lot of working on is saying, okay, if you need to be competent inside your main knowledge area, in this case for Scrum Master, Agile, and Lean, what does competent then look like? And how do we go to advanced, beginner, and novice from there? And how do we go to proficient and expert from there? One thing when we now have a question about these things, I'm a big fan of not, because I could have pulled in some other words here and said, hey, look what I invented. I am a firm believer that there's some people that have done some work before you. And if that works, makes sense, then build on that. So I choose to do so. Instead, here's come the kicker. What you should be aware of is that if you're not competent, some people go, then I'm incompetent. So if I'm an advanced, beginner, or novice, I'm incompetent. So I don't want to be there. And then proficient, that sounds good, right? Because then I'm doing what I should do, but I'm actually I just doing that extra. That's where I want to be. I even maybe want to be an expert. So what we had to kind of describe here and saying, because competence here means that you're actually doing your work and you're doing it without needing to look at any textbooks. You can connect different methods and understand what to use when, kind of thing. So you're actually really good at this point. What we said on the proficient part is that if you're proficient, you're an internal in the company kind of person that people know for being good at something. So if you were proficient at facilitation and somebody wanted to learn about facilitation or wanted the company to host a facilitation training, they would go to you. And we also normally say this is where a department head or the CEO picks up the phone and call you because they have a question to this. This is kind of to understand what dimension we're looking for. And the expert is the one that is either writing a white paper, participating in some international conferences, is reviewing a book on the topic, or whatever it is. So it's we need to have an understanding what is expected of these different levels. And maybe renaming them if people don't like them. I'm just against that, but that's just me.
We have 3 minutes and 3 questions, so let's try to cover all of them. So
quicker answers, yeah.
Okay, who is the best line manager for Scrum Master from your experience? Where to put them in the organizational structure? From the perspective, who could support this role best?
Yeah, first of all, line manager wise, because this was one question, right?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Line manager, if you look at where to put this in the organization, if you have a transformation office that have actual power, I would put it there. Or else, if you have, let's say, 4 business units, the business units heads would normally meet. Then I would definitely meet up with HR, because the competency thing is something with HR also, where they get involved. So I would do that. And then I would definitely go into this business unit forum and kind of explain this to them, why this is important. And I would definitely do my homework. I have nothing against silly hats or post-its. I have post-its on my table. I don't have any hats, but I don't have anything against those. But remember your audience when you're doing this. So get them on board that way. When we talk about line manager, you could either have a line manager in the department you're in. So then sometimes you have to explain to your line manager that they're the reason why everything sucks and they should change. That's kind of hard sometimes. So that's a negative on that. Then you could centralize the role. So we have a person out here that's responsible for the transformation office that have reporting lines to all the Scrum Masters have reporting lines up here outside the department. The problem here is that then it's, if somebody don't like that thing anymore, it's easy to just cut the entire thing and then it's dead. There's also something about budgets. So when the department then goes on an offsite or something, or some training, you don't have a budget there. So you need to think about allocating some of that budget, because if you have a reporting line outside your department, you can now tell the head of the department that they suck if you need to do.
Okay, 2 more questions. So yeah. Karel is, he's a Scrum Master, I know him, so the question is going to be tough. With how many teams a Scrum Master is still productive and bringing value? Not sticking to the Scrum guide, saving purposes, of course, and best wishes from him as well.
Yeah. In an ideal world, if you want to create that trustworthiness, there can't be too much distance between you and the team. So I would say ideally 1-to-1. So 1 team, 1 Scrum Master. And when people tell me about, hey, what should I then do? I mean, I've been running around corridors, having somebody talk about automating deployment and stuff like that, things I didn't know anything about, but helping connecting the team, asking some customers because the product owner haven't done so, something. But to answer the question and put a number on it, I would say no more than 3 teams. And then you have to be very mature, and the teams also need to be fairly mature. I would normally not advise going over 2.
Okay, I think these were all the questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to thank you, Jan, so much for sharing your experience and all your knowledge, for answering all these questions.